My name is Guttery, and today I'm going to talk to you about accelerating the design process through rapid prototyping and somehow relating it to a steak rapide, which is a fantastic dish. So hopefully I'll be able to relate that. So firstly, a little bit of introduction about who we are. We are a company called Axon56, and we're a design lab, and we develop ideas from scratch, literally from a piece of paper or even from an idea that's already developed, and make those into tangible products that can hopefully be sold in the hundreds of thousands, or if you're in the luxury industry, perhaps sold in the minute quantities for very, very high price. At Axon56, we believe in three core elements in design that we like to sort of tackle each project. And the first one is insight. We like to believe that you really must understand the project. You really, really must understand what the client wants from the project and what the customer will get out of the product that's produced in the end. If that means reading white papers if you're working on a medical product, or understanding the principles of mechanics in perhaps a wearable product, we believe this is absolutely critical to one of the ingredients of making a fantastic product. The next is synergy. We believe that working together with people, specialists, outside resources on a product is also absolutely critical to making something fantastic. You need to bring in specialists because you can't always be the best at everything. I know we're certainly not. We're very good at lots of things, but there's some things that you just need people to come along and help. Again, medical is an example. Perhaps you work with surgeons or something along those lines. Synergy and collaboration is really, really important. The last one is simplicity. The key, again, to just keeping the product as cheap as possible, but also maximizing its efficiency, is simplicity. Having something that's beautifully simple is also, it's fantastic to look at. When something gets complicated, people lose sight of what it really is. And keeping something simple is just true beauty in itself, and there's something that we try and pour into each of our designs. Just to give you an idea about some of the products we've worked on, how we've implemented these core values, and how we've used 3D printing throughout that. With Insight, we worked on this screw in Singapore, which is a pedicle screw, and this screw goes into the back of your spine and assists with spinal fusion if you've had to have a disc replacement or something awful like that, a sort of very, very large trauma. And we had to have a massive understanding about how the operation procedure works, how the screw goes into the spine, the post-op procedure. We had to speak to many doctors, and also understand the fundamental mechanics of how the device expands within inside the spine and holds itself in place and doesn't pull itself out, which sounds pretty gruesome. It was pretty gruesome. But we felt we made a fantastic product at the end, and the insight was critical to making this 100% correct. We worked on this fantastic looking bicycle with Lotus, and I think this is a great example of synergy. Lotus, as you know, obviously make very, very fantastic supercars. As you can see here, it's only a sketch. That is because Lotus seemed to be sold every other week to a new company, and as we finished this concept, well, they were sold. So obviously the concept did not carry on any further, but it's a great example of synergy. We had to work with Lotus to understand their design language. If you've ever worked in the automotive industry, you will know that design language is king, and each company has its own design language. And we had to try and translate the design team's design language into the Lotus bike. And we felt we got it right with the shape and the curves which Lotus use. And also we looked at interesting aluminium bonding processes, which Lotus are very, very sort of famous of doing. Lastly, we looked at something to look at is the simplicity factor. Again, bikes, we do a lot in bikes, no idea why, perhaps because I'm a cyclist, it seems to come to us. But the front forks on this Grace 1 bike, we designed those about 5 years ago now, and they are still on the Grace bikes today. And Grace, again, I don't know why I seem to work with companies that seem to get sold, but have been sold last year to an Indian firm, and they're still producing these forks. So at Eurobike this year, I saw the forks still on the bike, and it was an incredibly simple design. It was a very simple brief to produce a set of forks that went on a fully integrated bicycle and matched with its quite sort of large-looking frame. And we actually used a lot of 3D printing to 3D print these forks completely using FDM processes. And as you can see, it worked, and the forks are still used 5 years later. Today, though, I'm going to talk to you about accelerating the design process with 3D printing and the steak rapide. I have to apologize to anyone who is a vegetarian. I'm a carnivore, so I just thought the first dish that came to mind, that was a steak, as most carnivores do think of. you're probably thinking, why a steak rapid? How does that have any relation to 3D printing? Well, it doesn't have much relation to 3D printing because you can't 3D print a steak, but it does have relation to speeding up the design process and how it relates to speeding up the design process. It's a very tenuous relation, I will admit. A steak rapide is basically a steak that's bashed wafer thin and then is cooked within about 15 minutes, I think even less than that, and served to you with chips. It's incredibly tasty, it's incredibly quick, and it's an incredibly lovely dish to have. And it's prepared in the shortest possible time, so you turn up to the restaurant, it's prepared, it's ready for you. You want the highest possible quality, and obviously if you are French, because that's where it originates from, you will have the highest quality because they're fantastic at doing food. I wouldn't recommend getting a steak rapide in the UK because it will be quite dreadful. And you want full satisfaction at the end of this meal, and then you want to leave within a very, very short period of time. And the same has happened to the design industry. The design industry has sped up so much over the past sort of 5 to 10 years. The consumer wants the product yesterday. And as designers, as myself, we have to keep up with this really high demand of how the products turn over. A product literally comes out every couple of months, and I'll come on to that in a second. If you look at the original design process, this is obviously very, very compressed. You obviously always start with the sketching, you move on to CAD, then you perhaps conceptualize, you test, and you improve and you go back and forward, and then once everything is ready, you then take it on to model making and you do some sort of showcase models which perhaps you can show to potential customers, and then you prepare for manufacture, which is completely another chain of events. This is the original process. This is the process that used to be done and is done today on some products, but it is a long process, and it's long for an important reason, because it makes a good product at the end, a product that works. This is the process now. You sketch your CAD and you go straight to manufacture. This is what clients come to us and what they want, and this is what the customer wants, because they want the product yesterday. And the concept and testing and model making is completely dropped out. We've actually quite often had projects that come along where the client wants to remove those parts and just skip them. These are parts that can't be skipped. They are really critical. And so the time zone, the time for those you have, the time limit gets compressed. You have to negotiate with the client, and then all of a sudden, you've only got a week to do the model making part, which sounds like quite a long time, but in actual fact, it's not a long time to try and get a product made and then test it out, because the testing has been cut down to a few short days as well. I think a prime example of this is the mobile phone industry. They are the kings of producing products for us on a very rapid rate, and quite often not particularly fantastic products. They literally are pumping out phones daily. If you look at Apple, they've increased their production rates and we're launching new iPhones every 6 months now, apart from every year. Nokia, well, no one knows what they're doing because they're not really doing very much. Samsung proceed to produce a phone every other day, and quite often they're dreadful phones. We have basically become the beta tester for a product that hasn't really been tested. And quite often we seem to do all the testing, and then they make another phone which is as bad as the one before. I don't understand where our test data goes and what they collect, but they seem to be doing that. And that isn't, they're obviously making a lot of money from this, but they want to keep producing these, and the consumer keeps demanding them, and they must have. We're constantly saying, I want the next iPhone. Remember when the iPhone 6 came out, there were already leaked pictures of the iPhone 6S, and they're probably onto the iPhone 7S now. The 7's probably already designed and ready to go, and being manufactured at Foxconn as we speak. This is an example of a phone that was designed with the old design process. I'm sure most of you in this room, there's not too many people that are under the age of 15, had one of these back in the day. It worked, you always got signal. You could drop in the toilet a few times and it would still come back out and work again. And the battery life lasted for beyond half a day. You could actually get a week out of this, and it obviously had Snake, which is the greatest game ever conceived. And so this was the old design process, and you can see that if you put that into practice, it really does work. This was probably out when 3D printing was only in its sort of birth stage. And if you relate that back with my tenuous relation of steak rapide, if you imagine that now a new manager comes in and runs the restaurant, and he wants to get things out the door even quicker, and he doesn't even want to test the product that leaves, you're going to have a steak that's not even cooked, that's going to come and arrive to you on a plate that hasn't been tested or cooked, and your best friend will be the toilet for the next couple of weeks because you'll be feeling pretty ill. So this is a problem, and this is a problem that designers that myself are facing now. But however, there's some very kind people out there who've sort of pushed 3D printing forward for us. I'm sure they have other reasons pushing 3D printing forward, but it's helped us as designers out massively. when you look at the sort of conceptual and testing stage, it used to take weeks. You would design a product, you would then take it to the model maker, and model makers are fantastic, I'm not showing them at all, but you would want to get CNC machined, perhaps vac casted, this takes time, you need to make a mold, you need to produce these. The client doesn't have time for this. We did a project recently and it was a 3-week waiting time to get things made. The client wanted it done in a week. It's just not possible. And this is where 3D printers really step in, which many people have obviously spoken about today, is they can really change something that would normally take a couple of weeks into days or hours that we need as designers to keep up with the consumer's needs. To give you an example, this is a very old wearable that I worked on. It doesn't look as fancy and cool as the new wearables now, because this was done around the same time as the Nike Fuel Band or the first Jawbone. And it was just a very simple concept wearable that had a simple accelerometer that just recorded steps and galvanic skin response, etc. However, the client needed this in the States within 1 week. Needed a working model, not an internally working model, but a look-alike working model that we could show and he could show the investor and put on his wrist. And so, obviously, standard model making process would have been too long to get that CNC machined, etc. So we obviously got it made with 3D Print Bureau, and we had it printed within a day, and then we sent it to a model maker who all we had to do was paint it, and then we had that out to the States within a week. And that just couldn't be done with the original design process unless those people are working 24/7, which quite often in Europe they are not. And takes us back to, it really helps us in this new process put the concept, test, and model making back into our line. They have been compressed and they have been shortened, but they really are, they're back in there, and that's important to make a better product. And again, going back to prepared in the shortest possible time, highest quality and the full satisfaction without needing the toilet at the end of it. So today, I want to talk to you about Nipi. Very kindly, they've let me display the product that I've been working on recently. It's over near the presentation area. I didn't know this was the presentation area. You're probably thinking, what is it? It looks like some sort of spaceship. Unfortunately, it's not a spaceship. It is literally a cooler that cools your food and drink. However, it's one of these new smart coolers, which is very exciting. It cools your beers for 6 days. It recharges your phone. It has a solar panel that comes out the top that recharges the onboard batteries. You're looking at me thinking, why does that even exist? Well, there are lots of people that actually want to go out to the beach and go camping and keep their phone charged. We want to keep on the grid 24/7, especially in America. They love that sort of stuff. And this is incredibly unpopular. However, without getting too carried away with marketing this year and trying to get you to buy one, I want to tell you a bit about how we use 3D printing to help get this process done very quickly, because we had a very short time frame. We basically had from November 2014 till March. Now, that looks like it's quite a long time, but it actually isn't. When you start literally from nothing, like I could have just copied a standard cooler, which would have been a square box, which would have been exceptionally exciting. But I didn't want to copy that. I wanted to make something completely new and different, and we needed to get it produced in a very quick time to have it ready for investors. And so 3D printing was the only possible process. Now, we originally just started with obviously the standard conceptualization of sketching, getting things ready, understanding. We wanted to put in some very automotive-looking design into the product, really make it beautiful. And I think Nipi's sort of slogan is not being square. We really didn't want to be square. And once you start adding non-square items to your design, you start adding cost. And again, you start adding longer lead times, which again, if you went to CNC machining or something, would take a further longer time, and then the client would get even more irritated. So 3D printing was our route. As you can see here, here's some just initial renderings of Nipi once we had actually finalized design. We did actually do a few other iterations. We didn't just jump straight to this. We actually did went through quite a few design processes. Once we had it designed in CAD, the beauty, obviously, with 3D printing, is you can just send it straight to the printer with very minimal setup time. And you can test now fantastically with 3D printed parts. We used the Connex printer, again with 3D Print Bureau. We wanted to test all these different size wheels to roll over different types of terrain. If you look at standard cooler wheels, they're all very tiny and look very ugly. We wanted something that was very different and very space age and could roll over any sort of terrain, over sand, over mud, etc. And what we did, we printed these in the multi-material printer, which is basically a designer's sort of dream, basically. We can print all these different crazy things and have all different shore hardnesses and stuff, but it really is useful because we could print all the wheels out, all the different size variations we wanted, made a little test rig, we could print out different shore hardnesses for the tread pattern, and then we could test these over the different terrains that we selected. I think there's a picture here of us on the beach. I don't know how much testing we did when we were down at the beach, but there was enough. And we could try out all different wheels. This is actually the last rendition of the wheels that were chosen because we went for the maximum size in the end for ultimate rolling capability. But this gives a great example of how the multi-material printers really accelerated the design process. We then, once we had sort of started testing parts, we knew exactly which way it was going to go and how we wanted to show the investors, we basically 3D printed the whole item in sections. I don't know many people that have a very, very large 3D printer, so we had to use cut down sections and stick them all together. But this, again, increased our speed when it came to the model making because we could then ship this to China. I know it's quite dangerous shipping stuff to China like this, but we have a good connection there. And they could then sand it all down and get it basically prepared to make it look like a real product, but it did work and look like a real product at the same time, and this 3D printing allowed us to do this. You can see the sections here that we printed it all off in and how we've had to stick it together. And you can, we used a lot of FDM with this, but I also forgot to put on there, we used a lot of SLA processes as well, and you can see the wheels on the side. This really, again, just increased our speed. This is us looking inside it and we're putting all the lights inside. And then this is the final item, which you can see over on display now after we had printed it. And this was done in a matter of 2 weeks, which for quite a large item is exceptionally quick. And all the lighting was installed, it was tested, it was working, and then the client was exceptionally happy. And you can see another picture here of her finished. And then there's some very lovely pictures of us. That's obviously not me fishing, I can't fish. But the picture there's a party that we had it at. This is a 3D printed object which works and is usable. It has been beaten now quite badly, so when you go and look at it at the stand, try not to touch her because she's a little bit delicate now because she's been dragged around the world. But yeah, and just wanted to sum up really that 3D printing has assisted us product designers keeping up with this rapid pace of the market and keeping up with the consumer demands. And we basically would be very stuck without them. And thank you very much.